Welcome to our WMIA Spotlight series, where we sit down with this year's Wealth Management Industry Award winners, better known as our wealthies, to explore the innovations shaping the future of advice. I'm Shannon Rossick, Director of WealthStack Content Solutions at wealthmanagement.com. And today I am thrilled to be joined by Hayk Sahakian, co-founder and CEO of Arca. And Arca was actually recognized in the Disruptors Technology category, personally one of my favorites, for its groundbreaking approach to AI workflows and transforming intent into actionable outcomes and redefining how advisors operate in a digital-first world. So I can't wait to dive into this conversation. Hayk, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Shannon.
Absolutely. It's always a pleasure getting to catch up with you. And I wanted to say a big congratulations on your 2025 Wealth Management Industry Awards in the Disruptors category for technology, like I said. So I would love for you to tell us a little bit more about your initiative and its impact on the industry.
Thank you. Yeah, this was a big one for us and it means a lot. And a lot of what we've been doing in this space and for the last, I would say 2 to 3 years, we've seen it transform so much. So for us to be ahead on the bleeding edge of technology, especially with AI and wealth management, it's a true honor for people to recognize what's going on, at least behind the scenes for us. So for the users we have and what it really means for us is that we've built an AI native operating system. And the advisors really, instead of going in and being the operator itself, where we're copy pasting stuff into ChatGPT, we're going and actually saying, why don't we have the AI do the work for you? And really, what that really boils down to is this training that we've had where ChatGPT has led us to ask questions, but really dedicate the creativity to the AI instead of us doing that, which humans actually love that part of it. We have flipped the switch and said, why don't we have the AI do the work for you? Why don't we really look at all these surface level things that you might not catch on to that's within the data, bring it up, have you look at it, and then from there be able to execute on it. So from an agentic workflow perspective, I think a lot of the industry is looking forward to having AI start doing the work and replacing a lot of the tedious and manual tasks that they're prone to have in any of the wealth management operations that we've seen and come across.
Well, you said something interesting there, that Arca is an AI native platform. How does being AI native differ from simply adding AI features, and why does that distinction matter for advisor productivity?
It's like putting a turbocharger on a 20-year-old engine. And I think a lot of times it's like, it'll work, it'll go faster. There might be some efficiencies, but that thing's not going to fly. And it's not operationally going to be set up to do anything in the future that you would potentially want to. So the way we look at it is adding chatbots and a lot of these summaries, note taking, etc. That's a natural part of AI adoption. And it's almost like when I go back and look at blockchain, NFTs and all this fun stuff that would come on was needed and was necessary for people to start understanding and adopting the technology. Now we're at a point where it's like, I would like it to do something, actually. So when you're going into an AI native space, you want it to be built and embedded from the beginning. And a lot of folks who are talking about adding AI truly are not really ready to do it because the data isn't there. They're still fragmented. They're still siloed. So you got to step back and really ask, what is really going on with my data, my tech stack, and am I ready to do it? Realistically, when we started to look at this problem set with a lot of our clients, we realized that they were, aside from just all this fragmented tech stacks, they had best of breed, they had different, swivel chair where they're doing a lot of operations and things like that. We said, why don't we become the connective tissue in there first, connect all these systems together, and then roll them into a solution where we can identify bottlenecks and start becoming more AI native, which means your data is ready to go from the get-go. The system's actually operating in the manner you would naturally as an advisor. And it leaves you more time to do the stuff that you like with the clients versus having to key in data, all the manual repetitive tasks that are out there that we know exist. And so it becomes a much more, hopefully, efficient and operationally much more fruitful engagement.
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned data because that is certainly the four-letter word in our industry right now, because you can't even begin to explore or dabble with AI if you don't have your data strategy in place. So I have to ask then, when firms evaluate how to modernize their technology, even just beyond data, what are the key factors that determine whether they should enhance existing tools or maybe even transition to a full AI native workflow?
The question that I love to ask anyone that we meet and start with an engagement is, where does the business logic really live? And if the business logic lives within the vendor softwares that you're using and it's fragmented and siloed, you've got bigger problems than just adding AI at that point. So wherever you can identify where those bottlenecks are and really bring them in house, that's the first key and the first step. And the first thing is having a clean data to work with. So, not to kind of throw things into the data lake house and things like that, because there's so much terms being around there, but just having a clean data set that you're working with and starting to own that, that's going to be the first step. So a lot of times where you looked at solutions out there where people are, hey, I want a data lake from the get-go, but it's so messy with all this other data feeding into it. Reconciliation is a mess. You're asking for trouble at that point. So for them, it's like, let's clean house first, then look at solutions out there that we can start working with, and then identifying bottlenecks where it becomes more operationally efficient. And I would say one of the things, the Achilles heel for our industry, is we're so reliant on PDFs. Even today, things like account opening, things like, looking at clients' data, even when you're there at the prospect stage. So much of it is just PDF driven that we need solutions where we can replace people looking at those PDFs and start working with it. And I think you guys had a great article about Cambridge, who built this AI agent internally that's doing account opening. A lot of the tasks that they went from 17 minutes to a couple of seconds each account was because everything was so based on PDFs. So I think that's where you got to first come into the solution, look at, where's the business logic live? It's with a person, then we got to automate it and put it into the workflow. Are they looking at documents or is it data set? Let's look at how clean that is, how much of it we can leverage to use for this process. And then from there, that's your jumping and diving point into the rest of the solution.
And as we know, the role of the advisor itself is constantly changing, especially with the advent of things like AI. So, how do you see things changing? What does the advisor of the future look like when it comes to AI and automation? And how is that impacting the relationship between advisors and clients?
Great question. Anytime I hear this one, I always look back at the robo advisor days when everyone would talk about how it's going to replace so many advisors' jobs, and obviously it didn't. So I think a lot of the fear around AI replacing advisors is pretty far out. That's not going to happen anytime soon, at least. I think what will happen, it's going to be less of man versus machine and more man with machine. And I think where you can have an AI run a lot of the back office and middle office stuff that no one really wants to do, then the advisor can focus on the front office stuff. I think that's an ideal relationship. And that's what the future of advice in our space is going to look like and what wealth management is going to look like for advisors. So I think there's going to be a really big shift. It's going to be less of these reports that even I used to do when I worked in private wealth management, which, we'd go and retroactively look at the portfolio over the quarter and say, this is what happened. It's going to be more of a shift towards this is what's going to be happening. And here's how we hedge across it. Because with AI monitoring a lot of the data, you're going to be ahead of what's to come. A lot of the predictive analytics, the forecasting, everything that AI can do for us today. So I think it becomes much more of an engagement with your clients as an advisor versus more of just operational tedious stuff where you need back office loads and people are just keying in data from PDFs and things like that. So more of the focus, and I think what people want to do in the advisor space is going to be where we shift toward leveraging AI, and I'm super excited for that.
I would have to agree with you there. And things are changing so quickly. And there's certainly a lot of excitement when it comes to AI. But on the flip side, what are you seeing when it comes to maybe some of the biggest barriers to AI adoption in our industry? And what do you think it'll take for wealth management to move from experimentation to that truly full transformation?
I think there's three to four things that I'm seeing out there as a trend. Obviously, the first one is the data part, which we covered. You have to not fear having a clean data set to work with initially. Second is changing the mindset around what AI is. Like I said, ChatGPT has been great in the adoption side of it for people to just use every day, but they've started thinking about AI as a feature versus the core functionality of a solution. So like you said, they like adding it as chatbots and note taking, et cetera. But the real power of AI is when you can have it sit across an entire tech stack and do the work for you across all those systems you're using. So I think that mindset shift has to happen. And then the other part of it is, I think trust. When you come really into AI, it's a lot of questioning of like, this was too easy. It just provided this answer to me so quickly. How do I know when I looked at the 10 things I usually look at to do it? And that there's no real solution there other than just time and functionality and using it and getting warmed up to it. Because a lot of times it's good for some things. I wouldn't say it's the best if you wanted to throw it in front of a client and say, do the meeting for me today. Maybe it starts doing some of that later on and can cover for you. But I think a lot of where you need to use it is deliberate rolling out of AI into certain things that build the trust for you. And then the fourth thing that I like to mention is really when it comes to AI, the adoption question from other founders that I've gotten is like, how do you get people to use it if they're saying they want to do this, and et cetera? Have AI do the most tedious stuff that they don't even want to do. That's the path of least resistance to get into any client and then expand from there. Because if I have a solution and I say, this AI can solve your headache, it's not going to be as error prone. Plus, you don't have to sit in front of the computer 24/7 waiting for a new file to show up for you to process this new account opening. Of course, you're going to do it. And you're going to be happy when it works versus saying, hey, AI is going to do all this fun stuff you like to do with your clients and try to replace your role. I think that's where you're going to meet a lot of blocks and roadblocks and obstacles from folks who are having fun doing that part of the job.
Well, I do appreciate you quelling some of the fears out there because, like I said, it's certainly an exciting time in our industry. And you said something in your earlier answer that it's human plus machine. And I've said that too, that AI should really always be looked at as a co-pilot right now. I don't think it's going to be taking jobs anytime soon because there's still very much that human element. So if anything, it's just going to make folks more productive so they can ultimately focus on what they do best, which is serve their clients. So Hike, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your perspective on how AI is truly reshaping the advisor experience. And just congratulations again to you and the ARCA team for your Wealthy Award this year. And to our viewers, thanks so much for tuning in to this WMIA Spotlight, and we'll see you next time as we continue to highlight the innovators driving the next wave of wealth management. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Thank you, Shannon.